Hey, this is Rob Charney, Old Guy Tech TV News 44, and we're here today with Opinion versus Opinion with Jonathan Charney and John Manischewski. And we've got a number of topics that we want to talk about for October 23, 2013. And we've got one that we thought we'd start with that John brought to my attention this morning. So, John, why don't you go ahead and lead off with this one?
Apparently yesterday afternoon, from what I can assess from the story, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a young gentleman was walking in Santa Rosa, 13 years old. If you've ever been to Santa Rosa, California, and not without its problems, but on some levels it's like you died and went to heaven. It is the county seat of Sonoma County. And this young man, I did not read, but Rob is, while we were talking about the story, apparently had an AK-47 appearing squirt gun, and also a fluorescent green pistol, maybe looking like a semi-automatic.
Possibly. I don't know if that was the actual gun in the photograph or just one they put in there, but
it's probably a stock photo.
California has a law on all toy guns, including squirt guns, that are supposed to have
have a disclaimer or some way you can readily identify that they are not actually a gun.
They can't be black color. They always have to have an orange tip.
Right.
So they always have to look bright and ridiculous.
So, I don't know what happened. Maybe he covered it up. Maybe
somebody might have done the way I read the story when it came off the wire initially this morning, and I was kind of surprised that I waited till 9:02 this morning that I saw it, because I'm looking at news when I get up in the morning at 5:36. Anyway, to make a rather grisly story go, 2 officers were in pursuit of this young man, who just continued to walk. They ordered him to put the weapons down and to stop, and he ignored what they were saying. And as to the report, and then there was an eyewitness report as well. It was a little different than what I heard from Rob, but they fired on this kid and they killed him. They went over, they handcuffed him immediately. And then they came with artificial respiration. It did not work. My concerns are, we've talked about some of the zero tolerance things at school, and being a school teacher, I vacillate, but at the same time, kids, and I mean anybody, obviously this kid had an altered squirt gun that at least appeared to the officers to be the real deal. And they decided that lethal force, because he did not stop at their many requests, although backup had showed up according to the news report.
Right.
And I just don't know how well, I kind of do, and we'll get into that as we discuss this, but I don't know how you draw down on a 13-year-old and use lethal force when I am assuming, but I think reasonably so, that there were other non-lethal ways, a beanbag, tear gas canister. There were all kinds of non-lethal ways this person could have been stopped.
Does Santa Rosa have a gang problem?
Yes. My
only assumption is it's kind of natural. You see a 13-year-old, you may not know, is he some sort of gangbanger or, Timmy the kid from next door, that it probably comes, point first, ask questions later.
In this story, this young boy may very well have been of Hispanic heritage.
Yeah, he is. I think he's
and he may not have understood the instructions being given to him. Just a little bit of the feeling by listening to this story from a family member, and so we may have had a language issue. I hate to armchair quarterback this thing, but we don't know if the boy actually took a stance holding a gun, pointing it at the cops like it was ready to shoot, or we don't know all the details on it. But it does bring one to wonder: couldn't we have used a taser? Couldn't we use some other non-lethal force?
Beanbag shotgun. You could even fire a tear gas canister to stop him.
Tear
There are
gas.
any number of non-lethal ways to stop him.
I think tear gas would have been hard. Was it an open room? What was the environment like?
No,
'Cause
it was,
that-
it was
Well,
outdoors
yeah,
on a road.
so that would have been better if it was some sort of paintball or.
That's what they have all these things at their hands, but I
Yeah.
bet they don't have these things in every unit, every squad car out there.
But that was my
Yeah.
concern when they said backup had showed up, and
Right.
after backup showed up, then things were fired.
Mhm.
The other thing is that you have to realize a lot of, and folks, cut me a little slack on this because I'm not saying this to criticize. It's just an observation. We have a lot of people that have mustered out of the service from Iraq and from Afghanistan that do not know that in the environment that they have been in, it is definitely shoot first, ask questions later.
Right.
Because this person could be carrying a bomb, it could be weapons. 13-year-olds are by no means safe in that environment.
Oh no, they're a big part of it.
And a lot of returning veterans find employment in police departments.
Sure.
I have idea none, and I certainly don't blame them. But it is, folks, the Vietnam War was special in many, many ways. But one of the things that was special about is you could be at Fort Ord, sent to Sacramento, put on a transport plane, and you were in Saigon 17 hours later. And you just left basic training. And same way coming home. You mustered out, you went through a couple of days, maybe, but then you got back on an airplane and you were back in the United States 17 hours later. Debriefed, detoxed. But I mean, and we talked about this with Josh and his buddy last week when we were talking veterans. I do have issues with the level of benefits and the level of care they get when they come back, and some of these guys are waiting 2 years to even get considered for benefits. God, if there's anybody that has priority in this country, it's somebody that put on the boots and the suits and went and did the job. And we do not help them acclimate nearly as much as we probably should.
There's also a rumor going around for the last couple of years that Obama puts all returning troops on some sort of terrorist watch list too. So there could be, as far as, are they, there could be that, there's just this political environment where it's become expedient to crap on vets.
Well, but I the president doesn't do everything.
Oh no, I'm not blaming it on him.
There's the opinion. I mean, there are a lot of the Veterans Administration, and I repeat my admonition of all the time. The bureaucrats are there for 30 years. The president's only there for 8.
Well, I'm not blaming this on Obama. I have no doubt that some of it is. Well, yes, because that's the rumor I've been reading that Obama specifically or his group of brain trust or whatever has been saying.
Well, I think we covered this a couple of weeks ago. There's a list of people on what they consider a terrorist watch list, and one of the group of people are returning vets that might have what is PSTD or whatever that is.
Post-traumatic stress
syndrome. Yeah.
The only reason why I said Obama is because that's the story I've been reading. I have no doubt that it has to do within his brain trust or people that is that people who answer to his brain trust. But kind of hard to blame it on him.
That list, I'm not blaming him for this because that list, just about every American in this country was on that list.
Yeah.
I mean, it was if you owned a gun, if you bought ammunition, if it got down to some silly stuff. And
go ahead.
Right, and it was just like, okay, who isn't on this list is what it comes down to. But that was another story. We went off topic just a little bit.
One
Not
last
really. Not really on
curl
topic.
on the Dairy Queen there.
Yeah.
What allows that is what we've said all along, and that is the Patriot Act. Because you have to remember, when we declared war and went into Iraq, we declared war on terrorism.
Right.
That is a very broad thing to be at war at, which gives the Patriot Act a lot of its teeth to just throw our security away.
So, that it what surprises me is that more and more people aren't coming out saying we really need to do something about this Patriot Act. You don't
Well,
seem to hear.
you know what? They're scared to death of us. We have not uprisen,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of people on the right, and I've had people say this to me on Facebook. Like the revolution is coming, and I said, well, revolution or civil war, whatever it is. There is a portion of the population that feels a certain way, and therefore, I could be a terrorist. You could be. Any of us could be construed a terrorist based on what we said or what we did.
Anybody who says they're waiting for a revolution is nuts. In this country with our military might, that'll go over very fast.
Well,
they'll line people up like
forget,
shell shock people did in the First World War. It's not going to work.
If we have a president that follows the rules and the way the Constitution is written, and posse comitatus, the military cannot fire on its own citizens.
So the last two presidents have not been following the rules.
Well, I'm sorry, but it's there, and one would hope that.
I don't know how W and.
Well, W for one is because you can. Unfortunately, the way it works is the president. The stuff that happens under the president terms, the president gets blamed. Whatever reason, I'm saying the Patriot Act and the other things he did and the other things he was for probably didn't follow the rules. And Obama continued it. If it's fair or not, it's also Obama's legacy too.
Well,
it may not be fair, but that's the way the ball bounces.
I understand your position, Jonathan, and you have a right to feel that way.
So what do you think, John?
I do have something that kind of talks to this subject, when bringing it back to the young man that was unfortunately shot by these law enforcement officers. Don't forget, not only did one family lose a child, but two other families also are struggling. I'm sure these officers are just sick.
Well, you hope so.
Just sick. I'm sure they are. I
you hope so.
It, yeah.
They're on administrative leave, as they should be, and they should be left anonymous and let the facts come out.
Right, and I hopefully that's going to come in. And anyway, yesterday I was reading a story that, in a way, talks to police powers that I thought maybe might be interesting for us to discuss, and that has to do with warrantless searches and even some warrant searches that go awry. And you look at some of them, and it was kind of interesting. There's been a number of examples of these no-knock warrants in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden you hear shouting, screaming, somebody busts in your front door, and you've got all these people coming in. And the instinct, of course, is that you're being attacked, and you're going to want to make sure that nobody comes to your family, and you pick up a firearm, right? And you go to face the threat.
Law enforcement has killed a number of veterans that way, and the veteran was blamed every time in the media.
It's a scary thing, because I put myself into that same situation. I mean, what if I'm different? I have acreage here, so nobody's going to surprise me as far as that goes. But if I was living in a regular home, and let's say it's happened over and over again where they've gotten the wrong address or they've gotten the wrong person, and they've busted into a home, and the homeowner, just defending his life, has been killed, and it's a real issue. I worry about it quite a bit, and so I was thinking, what would you do to warn law enforcement, saying like, hey, law enforcement, I'm armed, I'm skilled, I know what I'm doing, pay attention to this, just knock on the door, I'll answer it unarmed.
Well, the only problem, they can't do that because they don't know if the person they're knocking is, like, a lot of the times I've seen it, they're doing like big cities because it's a drug dealer and this and that. They can't go knock on the door because it hurts them. A no-knock warrant is safer for
I understand.
Well,
I think this is going to be a question for the sheriff to help answer, but it worries me.
I don't think that's legal in California.
In Sacramento, and I don't know so much about up there in the hills, you have had more than one home invasion, robbery, murder,
many,
as it were. So, it's, let's go to what Jonathan said. But if it's a dope dealer, the question of it is, since the war on drugs is such a huge failure, is that really a valid reason to go into somebody's house? Because you have information that you gleaned from the electrical meter on this, you know what I mean? The web is very deep and involved now. And if a guy legitimately, sure your property is surveilled to a certain amount, Rob. So
No.
you would know who's on the property.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've got security cameras everywhere, so it gives us an idea.
Just because they're paranoid doesn't mean they're not watching you. And I support that 100%.
I am paranoid, but really, it did make me think quite a bit about this.
Hey, that's pretty much a violation of your Fourth Amendment right. They're coming in with a no knock.
Yeah.
Or how about the guy that's at the wrong house?
I do have a question, though.
Exactly.
I do have one question. Say, for some reason, sheriff department, SWAT team, whatever, goes into your house, and then you not knowing, pick up a gun and actually kill a couple of them, full-on face shots, whatever it takes. You end up knocking them down. What would happen to you? Would you be crimed? Would you get, because in California, that's special circumstances. That's death row.
You'd be fortunate to be alive if you fired the weapon. You know what I mean? If you got a couple of them, they would definitely get you.
Well, I'm just saying, if somehow,
and I don't mean that as a revenge thing. If gunfire started, they're primed.
Well, I meant if somehow the planets align and somehow you survived and you killed 2 law enforcement LEOs, what do you think would happen? Is that special circumstances?
It's again, your life is ruined. It's just like I teach in my concealed weapon courses. I mean, you must think about the circumstances and what you're about to do. Your life will be ruined if you survive it. Their lives are ruined. Yeah, I mean,
but would you think? But the question is, would you get charged for being a cop killer?
Oh, probably. But
even though they went, just busted in your house.
No, yeah. In the beginning,
they busted
you probably
in your house screaming Sonoma County Sheriff or whoever they were. I'm sure they don't come in silently. That's not a usual.
They're not supposed to. No. But I'll give an example that happened right here in our own county about 10 years ago now. Had a situation, and this was a daytime, it was something like 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, and a parole officer was looking for a particular parolee to rearrest, to bring back, and he had backup from the El Dorado County Sheriff's Department, and he goes up to the door, and this parole officer is dressed in a Hawaiian shirt and cutoffs and flip-flops, and he knocks on the door, and he didn't get any answers, so they started to bust in the door. The suspect was just a few inches away, had a baseball bat, and swung at him, hit him, and of course they went full force and knocked him down. And the district attorney charged him with battery and assault. And yet, if you had a guy that was coming at you at your front door in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts and screaming at you, I think just about anybody would take a swing at this guy. At first, he was charged and did spend some time in jail. He got a good lawyer that finally got him out and got the case dropped because it was obvious they made a major mistake in this situation and wasn't done right. So all it takes is something stupid like that.
Hey, you can't win, and that's the terrible thing. Your Fourth Amendment rights have been suspended to such a level, and I certainly don't see drugs as an okie dokie, but somebody can come barreling through your front door, and we talk about this because this is the issue upon which you and Jonathan, have reservations about having your guns altered or messed with, and I have reservations. I fully understand. If I lived, where I live now, there is a firearm, okay, that if I need to, I can get to, because it's that kind of a world, unfortunately. It's sorrowful that we've gotten to that point, but if you take up arms against the wrong guy, man, you're in deep shit.
Yeah. Well, I always said that, you look back in history, this is what we're seeing on some of this isn't unknown even 100 years ago. It's just that we know it quicker, faster, and more because of the age of communications that we're in.
The difference is 100 years ago in Nazi Germany, Nazis didn't know not only what you had for breakfast, what website you've gone to, every single minutia detail of your life, to so much they can show up at work at 5:15 in the morning when you show up and go, "You're coming with us." I mean, that's this level of watch. Even Soviet Russia would have been wow.
Oh, but at the same time, you can go to Australia and go to Great Britain and be even more highly surveilled.
Oh, totally.
They're I mean, it's everywhere. It's omnipresent. 1984 sneaks up on you when you're not
The,
looking.
the EU recently just passed like a data protection privacy, so they're taking privacy seriously. Where in the U.S. the government finds our privacy more of an annoyance to their surveillance. At
Well,
least
and the thing that it does is it suppresses demonstration because they're going to know who I am.
what it is it's going to
Good
breed
point.
it's going to breed more groups like Anonymous. You're going to have a collectivist people wearing masks. It's going to be more anonymous. It's going to be meeting on groups meeting on deep webs doing stuff. It's just going to make it harder to find.
Well, what it does is it also stirs, the deepest of perversions in people, and the deepest of paranoias, which may not be, in the final analysis, we might find out those crazy SOBs were right. I still walk around holding that rose in my teeth, going, it's okay, but I have my moments when I go, boy, if you are wrong, you
Yeah.
have, you have bought the big one.
So
you
you
bought the big love.
you still have those rose-colored glasses from the '60s?
No, I have rose-colored glasses from the new millennium. I can't. I try to look at things. I mean,
Well, you want to be positive. I mean, I feel the same way. I really want to go about life being not paranoid and not thinking there's bad guys around every corner. I want to think that we're still the greatest country in the world. We're still the strongest economic power in the world. No matter what problems we have, I still want to be positive about what's happening, even if we're not happy with what's going on. We're still here. We're still growing. We're still functioning. It's
see,
not.
and there are things to be unhappy about. I agree. But as we said earlier, no matter what news organization you use, they're bought and paid for, and they're fully biased, and they do have agendas, and they do say
Sure.
things that are not true, and it's not, no one in particular. They all make mistakes, and they overclaim, and they overreach. I just don't know how you get honesty and integrity back into a society. I was just talking to a friend today that's a media salesperson, and a very good one, has been for many, many years, but it's getting to the point where literally he feels like the people that he is employed by, and for all those broadcasting people out there, I still know a lot of broadcasting people, so it's not anyone in particular, but they basically go, well, who'd you host for us today?
Yeah.
I mean, they're really not even, they're not even, putting a sugar coat on it. You need to go out and produce business. You're a salesperson. We don't care how you do it.
I will have to say I have a hard time after everything I've read over the last couple of years. Calling United States the greatest country in the world, it is a little misnomer with the last 100 years of our history. Especially I'd say from the 50s up.
Actually.
Well, I get the idea. After World War II, we came in. It looks like we saved the day because we could mass produce more crappy items than anybody else in history. And the more and more we get up, we play the superpower card, and we cause.
We came with more stuff than anybody could,
Yeah,
could defend against.
the problem now is we kicked up fair rulers, handed over dictators. We've done so many atrocities in the name of Americans, the greatest country in the world, that it's a little hypocritical at this point. And then the rest of the world finds out that we are spying on everybody. On such a level, but people weren't even sure how to take it.
That is so not an issue, because when you remember, if you go back to Francis Gary Powers and the U-2 plane over Russia, that they figured it flew so high they'd never get to it, and they forgot that maybe the Russians were kind of crafty and could make missiles that could go higher, and they shot him down. And then it became, politics and intrigue, and we finally traded him for the right Russian spy that we had caught. We've been reading one another's mail internationally for a very long time, John.
I think this is more dangerous than the Gary Powers and the spy plane and tapping international phone lines. They're tapping something that, that was DARPANet. They're tapping internet, which every single person in the world is practically connected to. There's a level of privacy breach here that, I'll be honest, I think it's unprecedented. The United States government is recording a huge portion of globally of people's internet traffic, phone calls.
So
I think this is a little more than just Gary Powell.
Think about this. Think about this for a minute. Just step back first. Hold on, John. Just step back for a minute and think about this. Did this really become what Snowden, what he exposed and what he said? Did this really become a surprise to you? Was this really a surprise?
No, but
No.
But it went from the realm of the 3 years ago. Everybody said, the dudes are crazy. They're not doing this much. To everybody going, as John said,
Look,
wow, the nut was right.
Look, let me remember when I owned an ISP. I ran an internet company. I was one of the original cowboys out there. Okay, we brought internet here, and you know what I got probably every 3 to 6 months. I got a warrant wanting to know a particular IP address and where it originated from. So, the information was there even back then.
But at AT&T, they have a hose in the box.
Well,
they don't even have to do that.
They don't even have to do that anymore. Now they figured out that they can just get the pipe right first, and then let the stuff go out to the other end.
You also part of that is that you have a corporatocracy here, so that big business is not that far separated from government.
Well, when you have companies
they
like we have all these communication companies that depend on the government to allow their licensing, how do you tell the government no?
But at the same time, when China opened up after Tiananmen Square and Tank Man,
Right.
Oracle, all of our tech companies went in there, and they had a flat promise, and they had to provide the Chinese government, some of this was engineered and worked on when our tech companies went into China and were required by the Chinese to leave back doors and ways for them to surveil, because the hackers that are, and the next war will be an information war, at least internationally. I mean, it's all about hacking and who's got the information, who doesn't have the information. And we know extremely well that China is like number one hacker. And then comes the Soviet Union. And so we didn't cause that. The level of, the greater the ability, the greater the ability. It's just like every form of mass media. The first thing that goes on it is pornography.
I just think it's a little hypocritical of us saying, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. We're innocent. We wave the white flag of freedom when we're probably one of the worst. I just think it's a little hypocritical about that.
It goes along with the mantle of being number one. In other words, if you're number one, everybody's trying to figure out how to topple you and become number one.
Yeah, but you stay number one by doing worse things than they do. I mean, we've done some pretty crappy stuff in the name of freedom.
Jonathan, I could go into levels of crappiness that we've gone into. I mean, you just start with napalm. That when we finally ended in Vietnam, we suggested maybe you shouldn't use this on people anymore. But we had used it on them for almost 70 years. Mm-hmm. All right, but we're number one, right? Also, a thing that you brought up that is troubling to me is, yes, up to World War II, we were a major industrial manufacturing income that could bury anybody on the earth with stuff. Mm-hmm. And you say crappy. Some of it was pretty. We set the standard up to the 50s.
Well, I was really only referring to the Sherman tank. That was really it.
Yeah, but that's military. The production, you could also say, a 56 Buick deuce and a quarter, which is nothing more than a Sherman tank.
They produced B-24 bombers at literally 1 an hour.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I mean, we had the ability. Think about that. I mean, it was unbelievable our industrial strength. I mean, it was amazing.
And we also made B-52s that in Vietnam, the bolts that held the wings under the fuselage would crack, and a lot of B-52s went down because they broke.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. post World War II, and there's a lot of study, and you can read for days and days and days and days and days. And this bothers me on a regular basis, and I want to know. Somebody decided that the United States of America would no longer be a manufacturing and production economy. They decided that we were going to be a consumer economy.
Right.
I think a lot of things that we see happening now in corporatocracy and business running government was this, and the Koreans making big machines and big things, and the United States buying them instead of producing them ourselves, which means, and here's, when manufacturing leaves our shores, R&D goes with it, because the research and development make bigger, better machines, goes to where you make bigger, better machines. So part of this corporatocracy, the dollars. I mean, I think we would both agree that we've got to get money out of political campaigns, because it stays any further, gets any bigger. They really do need to wear NASCAR suits into Congress and show their sponsors when they come in the door.
Yeah.
But the idea that we went to a consumer economy and just left the production economy behind, beginning really in the 50s. I mean, space and technologies, but
we were our own worst enemy. Okay, meaning that when we became consumers and became a consumer country, we wanted the lowest price. Everything had to be the lowest. What's the bottom bid? What's the lowest price? And we didn't have an opportunity to continue to manufacture whatever it may be at the lowest price. That's why everything went overseas, because they didn't have EPA, or they don't have EPA.
Right.
They don't have the unions. They don't have health care. They hire 12-year-old children.
Some places do, some places.
They use lead paint. I mean, there's all kinds of things, and we're part of the blame, because we said, you know what, I want that, but I want it cheaper. And instead of saying quality, and I'm willing to support that auto worker out there and buy a car that's built better, but it's built here. We don't have that mindset anymore.
Yeah, well, I'll come up with a thing that people have put. I don't know. I've made some references at my Facebook page to it. We're now early enough, and I want to look in that camera and say, folks, when it comes to the holidays, when it comes to Thanksgiving, and you folks in Northern California, even me here in Bakersfield, being in a more rural area than LA, buy that gift from somebody local. Don't go to Walmart. I know you got 9 zillion kids and everything else, but if we're going to turn this thing around, we have to start putting money in the pockets of our neighbors.
Yeah.
And I had a long conversation with the Australians that were visiting over the last weekend, and they're experiencing the same thing. Many of them are making a conscious decision to do business with local business owners.
Oh, but I was going to add to that. Also, if you're going to buy a car, those foreign jobs, a lot of them are actually built here versus
Most of
Ford,
them,
which,
right.
by the way, is not.
No effect.
So buying Ford, matter of fact, is helping the other country.
Why do you say that?
Is because a lot of the manufacturing jobs for like Nissan and Toyota is in the States,
Well,
versus
it
some
isn't
Fords
for-
where some Fords are not even assembled; they're just shipped over.
Some are, but what you don't realize about Ford is they didn't take bailout money, and the company was reabsorbed by the family, and Ford dollars all go through Dearborn, Michigan.
Well, yeah, no,
It's not like GM, where the Chinese division, they are the biggest selling car in England.
Well, yeah, well,
I mean, before you impugn them, do a little bit of homework.
Well,
no,
and also what
I actually know that and more, but it was just an example.
Okay, well, if you want to, because Ford not only helps our own economy, they help Canada and Mexico as well. So, I mean, they really are a global entity that helps multiple countries.
But by the way, the only way they survived that, by the way, was selling their huge stake in Mazda, selling Volvo, selling Aston Martin, selling
sure.
Land Rover. I mean, they sold everything. They're basically the original three at this point.
Well,
They overextended themselves. I didn't know why they were doing that at that time anyway.
Yeah, I think that was bound to happen no matter what was going on. They had too many brands. They had too much going on. They were spread too thin.
It wasn't a bad investment because it saved them from going under or getting targeted.
Well, they gave them a reserve, but this is
Right.
also, at that particular time, management name was not spelled Ford, which it is now. The family is back in control. They made the choice that they wanted to take their company back and do what it was supposed to do.
And I'm glad they did, because I'll tell you what, they're making some of the finest looking automobiles out there now.
Well, and some of them do come from Europe.
Yeah.
But since they keep the money here, Jonathan, if there is, and I don't even want to go there, but there is no way I can be. That's probably why I buy a German car, and I just can't. I can't sit with Japanese companies. I can't sit with their attitude, and I don't want to raise the scare. But if we ever seriously got to talking about Fukushima, and it makes any other nuclear disaster on this planet pale by comparison, and it gets worse daily.
Yeah, daily. Stay tuned,
Well,
because it's nowhere near over with.
Well, we could talk about Fukushima.
Yeah. Talk about how poorly designed from the Japanese. I scratched my head and I go, you did what? You put your backup generators at ground level, knowing that there could have been a flood?
My favorite story about that is, I guess the Russians, having learned a lot about radiation and stopping it, had offered the Japanese this floating thing that helps store all of it. And I guess the Japanese said, "No, that's okay, cute little Russians. We'll do our own thing." And apparently now they're gathering world scientists on figuring out how to not poison the entire ocean.
It's Chernobyl, which actually did more to actually bring the Soviet Union down than Star Wars did. I mean, Europe was so PO'd when Chernobyl went off, which is now, it's still a hot spot. It's got a bunch of concrete in it, but it's by no means safe. And that toxic cloud went out across Europe, and that brought the Soviet Union down more than anything else. When their neighbors went, "Hey, you almost killed us."
Star Wars,
not a good idea.
Star Wars was more on a pie in the sky, because we're benefiting stuff from Star Wars now, but there was no chance it was actually going to do something in the 80s, early 90s.
I just think it was
supposedly we and the Israelis, at least on the small missile side, can stop them. So.
Yeah, it's a very catchy name. I was just reading, you're talking about missiles and all that. We just, almost all our Patriot missiles are on the West Coast, and they're constantly moving them around here. I was just reading this recently, and people are starting to pique their interest a little bit as to what's going on with all our mobile missile systems. They're being moved all around, and something's going on. You hear that little chatter in the background, and I don't know exactly what it is, obviously.
So is it like the old...
they haven't asked me my opinion.
What is it? It's like, was it the old... I forgot what it's called, but it's that command that would always have a certain number of planes up in the air.
Yeah.
It'd be like that.
It's still that way. No, that still exists.
SAC doesn't exist. Special Air Command got dissolved.
But it's just the name that got dissolved. We're still out there 24/7.
We're flying airplanes, man.
All the time. There's nukes up there all the time.
And here's the issue. One of the reasons the Patriot missiles are here, I think, doesn't make any sense. But, the Pakis and the Afghanis are at one another's throats. And, of course, India and Pakistan are always at one another's throats. They both have nukes.
Right.
You also, we have a crazy world where the middle, the far east are, working together. People far to the east, meaning far to the west, in our opinion, does Korea, for all intents and purposes, Korea doesn't have a delivery weapon, but the Russians and
Chinese do.
There's a lot of, and what happens with Russia is Putin's kind of like the head bully, but now that they have a capitalist system and they're allowed, there are guys that are just stupid Goldfinger rich, over there that could, and there are certainly ICBMs available in Russia.
We've been talking about this. It's funny, off air. We've had a number of discussions. There's a book I just bought from a gentleman who's writing the history of almosts. Basically, it had everything to do with how close we came numerous times of blowing ourselves up, and some of the B-52s that cracked up with bombs. There was even one that went so far as to it armed itself automatically, and it had to go through a number of switches. And if it hadn't been for a faulty switch, we would have blown up Kansas. It's so there's stories all over the place. So imagine if we had the problem. Just think what the Russians are going through.
On the positive side of that, Kansas would have no longer been flat.
No, the point is that we have a lot of nuclear material, fissionable material out there that nobody knows where it's at, and who has it. And back to the Patriot missile situations going on. What's starting to happen? I'm hearing chatter, people talking about the fact that they think Iran has the ability to launch a missile that'll actually hit on the East Coast, and that's kind of an interesting thing. That's a big jump in technology for them. So,
is this going to?
As long as these, and what we're finding out with our greatly shrunk digital world, as long as these things exist in the world, people can get their hands on them. I mean, bin Laden was frightening because he had an individual fortune that is formidable.
Yes.
He didn't have to ask other people for money. The bin Laden family has got a lot of money. And so, at the end of the day, folks, it really comes down to, it's all about the money. Whether it's in our shores, off our shores, we have the greatest wage gap that's coming on. But the fact of the matter is, there are people with money in excess of what any of us would understand to be countable.
Yeah.
And they can do pretty much whatever they want to do.
So
what's the president got to say? Hold on. Let's see. The president's got something to say.
And in keeping with the broad ramifications of a shutdown, I think it's important that everybody understand the federal government is America's largest employer.
So, Mr. President, government is America's largest employer. So
it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that was nothing new. He just told us that. But what was the shutdown? It turned out to be 13 days, right? Wasn't it?
16.
16 altogether. And we're going to face the same thing again in the end of January.
Supposedly not. But
well,
I'm not optimistic.
Who knows?
Well, it was the same thing with Obama's people being for that poison pill. Wasn't this resolved around where he said they want all this stuff to come to a head at once, so it makes Congress work together?
Good luck with that one.
That was sometime last year.
I have criticism at every level of the government at this point. They're all in it for themselves or some other interest. Obama has proved himself to not be an effective leader nor administrator.
He's just too young.
I'll buy into that.
Not enough experience.
No, I don't think it's his age. It's just him.
Because he was a freshman senator. I think the problem, he just didn't have much experience. I think that's what it comes down to.
I don't think he cares. I think he's on his way out. Right now, he's a lame duck. He's just trying to finish up. I mean, think how big his head must have been when he got elected the first time. He's become president of the first black man president of the United States. He gets a Nobel Peace Prize. Everybody's cheering. All the countries are oh, we got a wonderful person,
I love the Nobel Peace Prize because nowadays they're like, I wish I hadn't given it to him.
Now look where we're at. So you go from the pinnacle, the top. There was no more higher that he could be when he was elected the first time until what he's ending up now.
Okay, I'm actually trying to be positive and says it's just lack of an experience and being a Chicago politician.
No, it's neither one of those things. That's rhetoric. And no offense, guys, I'm used to hearing that from you.
But Chicago politicians, there's a reason why it's called that. They're known for being, so.
You could say the same thing about L.A. politicians. Somebody was ranking on Gil Garcetti finding TV ops and that kind of stuff, and I go, "Are you kidding me?" Sam Yorty, had KCOP, KTTV, and KTLA in his pocket.
We're
too
old.
It's just we
lost the audience as soon as you said that.
We
lost the audience as soon as you said Sam Yorty.
Yeah, I have no idea who that is.
Anybody that knows Sam, yeah.
What?
Sam Yorty.
I mean, that's like me.
Jonathan doesn't have a clue.
That's like me bringing up a Fibber McGee and Molly reference.
Jonathan, roll that picture back. So Jonathan found a picture of the actual toy AK. I'm looking at it as we speak.
It actually looks real, which is surprising. So what it is, it's probably the ones that have that orange tip, or they took that off.
It has absolutely no markings on it to make it look like a toy.
I'm sure somebody altered it.
Yeah, because I got to tell you, looking at from this,
it looks real,
photo,
doesn't it?
It looks real.
I can see why they would fire on them.
Boy, man, I wouldn't want to be the poor officers that made that decision in that poor child.
I still say in a 13-year-old, you have a lot of ways to resolve this non-lethally. And why did they shoot lethally? I mean, they could have knocked him down with a 9mm to the shoulder pretty easy, and found out what it was all about.
The only issue about that, I'll be completely honest, is that's kind of cowboy shooting. Law enforcement is taught one thing.
Center mass. You don't do. There's no such thing as shooting in the knee, shooting in the shoulder. That's all from television.
The issue with that is because you put other people at risk. You aim for center mass. That's the biggest target, the greatest way to slow down a bullet. You know, unfortunately. Matter of fact, non-lethal has killed too. So.
Oh no, I'm not saying it hasn't.
We got 15 minutes here. You want to stay on the kid, or you want to move to something else?
Well, we haven't particularly been on him. We've walked around in the forest.
As our normal, which is good, our normal walk all around. And
now we need to give the phone number, even though it's trailing in behind you. We haven't offered people the opportunity to call to contribute with what you have to say, or send us a $5.
Last show was so good because we had two people calling and talking and bringing more input to the show, and we certainly wish you would feel free to call. We don't ridicule anybody. We listen to every.
I mean, I apologize for Rob and John being nasty to him last time, but they weren't at all.
Yeah, didn't bother me.
By the way, I actually know who they are, so.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
I found out later that night.
Uh-huh. Well, okay, so we were talking about this young man in the toy gun that does look real. That story tomorrow we'll probably find out a little bit more, and the next day we'll find more about that.
And as gun owners, I would be even more upset than I am right now, because you're walking. I mean, as stupid as it is, right? If the guys in the black suits come to your house to take us off the air, and you're transporting a gun from the house to one of your vehicles, and they've got a no-knock warrant. What the hell is going on here? It looked like a gun, so we shot him.
Here is the biggest, and I think this is the biggest problem with the American culture, is it really comes down to parenting. I mean, you can't. There's not a lot of stuff parents can do. It comes with society just not being the same.
I'm not going to argue that point with you. I mean.
Well, I think that's what it is.
It's no longer innocent. There's nothing you can do about it. The genie is out of the bottle. I don't know how you get it back in.
And I think the worst part about it, and this is my opinion, is a guy who's played video games my entire life, is they blame it on games like Call of Duty and other violent video games. They've done it since Doom when I was a kid. It's not that, because they've actually found out that, hey, a kid going home and murdering his friends on a video game is actually a stress reliever. Violent TV and all that, where it probably doesn't help, but I doubt it hurts. It's the culture. It's a culture of where everything, including life, is throwaway.
Well, I experienced it today. I was back at the school where I caught the kids cheating on a quiz. The girl that was cheating on the quiz is in the band, Rob. And I'm band teacher this morning, and I identified her by name, and she denied that was she. Her friends denied that was she when I tried twice. I knew it was her. I just checked the roll to make sure. And I said to this kid, obfuscating your name is a very bad place to start. If you're not okay with your name, because your name is associated with things that you obviously are not proud of, because this girl had other issues at school.
Oh, I'm sure.
You're right, Jonathan. But the question is, I'm whatever I am, and I don't own any children. You're 30 years old and you don't own any children. Don't know if you will or you won't. It's a huge, and it was a huge decision when I was in my youth and middle age. For many people, of our generation also said, I don't want kids. It's too scary a world out there.
Yeah.
And it's become increasingly more frightening. It's become increasingly more immediate. You cannot protect children from anything, including themselves.
You know, while you guys were talking, I was thinking back a little bit on my childhood, and I was thinking about how different the kids are today than they were with us in the 60s.
Well, back in your day, if you did something, your neighbor would kick your ass,
Well,
and your parents would, okay, that's no problem.
There's some truth to that, to be honest with
yeah.
you. There was some definite truth to that, and we weren't
That's why you walk by the limp.
We weren't inside staring at a TV set playing this game. I mean, we were out. We were doing things. You know, John and I had the advantage of being in a band geeks, and so we were always either playing music or doing something.
Watching somebody play music.
Somebody play music.
I
whatever.
don't think the video games things as much, because I've talked to people halfway around the world. I mean, you can gain, but between the children saying horrific things about your parents. I've talked to people from England, Ireland, all the way around the world on video games.
I understand, Jonathan.
I'm not knocking reality.
Yeah. I'm not knocking what you went through, and I'm not knocking. If the kids want to play video games, I'm not knocking that. I'm just comparing the difference in society now to when I was growing up as a kid, and I look back at that, and sometimes I wonder how I'm still alive.
We'd stand around with guns that didn't look like the gun the 13-year-old got killed for in Santa Rosa, making gun noises.
Well,
imagining that we were playing war.
Yeah.
I shot you. You were dead.
Oh, yeah. We had BB gun wars. Hey, you know what? I finished my 22 rifle that my father had. I finished the stock in wood shop at John Adams.
Dear God, that would never happen today.
And I took the bus to school that day, which was public transportation in Santa Monica. Took the blue bus from home to John Adams. So I had this gun stock with me on the bus going to school. Could you imagine what would happen now?
Wow. Yeah, no, you'd get expelled. Matter of fact,
they'd believe you that I was just bringing it as a woodshop project to refinish.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Then now they would tell you, hey, you have a weapon. You'd be under arrest. You'd have a suspension.
You'd be suspended at
the other thing that I think we would all agree on is that we have become a society over the years of fear. We are motivated by fear, the loss of something. We are, if they don't raise the debt ceiling, if they don't get the government back to work, we're constantly having that ooga booga shook in our face.
Yes.
You know what I think the biggest thing is? I think for, at least as me as a guy, is culturally, I'm afraid to be around kids without a woman present. Because culturally, I'm a pedophile because I'm male. And whether you think about it or not, that is actually, I do know I've met and I've heard and I've read a lot of guys, they're even afraid of being around their own kids because of stuff like this.
They've had under hypnotism, my father did unthinkable things to me.
And it all turned out to be junk science.
And
it wasn't real. It was all
And as a guy who, likes kids, I refuse to watch my friends' kids just because it's like, I'm putting myself in a spot that could affect my rest of my life. Sorry, friends.
Hey. That door in my room does not close if there are young women in my room.
Yeah.
And I will tend to get up from the desk and walk to the door and talk to them in the door jam.
Yeah.
Right? And that's crazy. I mean, when we were kids, we were told not to talk to strangers, don't go with people that you don't know, but your teachers, your, part of the community, which is part of what we're losing here. Because instead of a community, we have a homeowners association that's more punitive than it is community.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
So, again, and on the economic scale, the more you have, the more punitive you seem to be, right? Because there's somebody, I don't want that, we're just scared a lot.
Yeah, it seems to be.
And I don't like being afraid. I really don't like being
I was going to
afraid.
say, talking about a teacher, there was another thing I read on one of my favorite websites. The guy was mentioning how there were the two difference between female teachers and male teachers is the female teachers were taken aside and taught the rules in the schools and taught everything. They took the male teachers aside and said, whatever you do, don't rape one of our students. And apparently this is kind of like what actually
Nobody's
happened.
ever said that to me.
Well, I'm assuming it's a
But
small case, but it's one of those things that they say it without saying it, I'm assuming. You know,
Okay,
leave your
well,
door
I'm
open.
sure some school in the
do a
world
pretty thorough
somewhere.
background check.
That's kind of odd, but
Well, I mean, this is it's an example of how it's the difference in culture and society where, you know, men are rapists, horrible people, and you know, I think it's a segment of society where you're just finding new
gotta
people
tell you
villainized.
that I don't. I guess some people see it that way. Again, maybe I have the rose color, but see, I refuse to be frightened by things that until we have a much higher occurrence of people doing awful things to one another. But we also have movies and we have books and we have other places that can stimulate the imagination of other people. You know, look at those three girls that were in what was it, Cleveland or Cincinnati, and they said the guy hung himself, and now they think it's some kind of autoerotic
Right.
asphyxiation.
right, yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
need to know that. The guy's dead.
Yeah.
You know, we saved a lot of money, and he may not have been guilty, but it sure looked like he was guilty. I don't know that would have had a lengthy trial for that guy, and he probably did things much more awful than anybody wants to talk about, which would probably have come out in the court, and just made it. Once you have said it, it is done. Once it passes here, whatever damage or whether it be functionally real damage or damage in that someone else now has a perverse idea that they did not otherwise think of themselves but are going to act on.
Whoa, we have a
got
late
another
caller.
Hi, this is Rob, Old Guy Tech TV. Who do we have?
This is Dan. How you doing, Rob?
Good, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know,
Hey, Dan.
great show. You know, one of the things I think about with this poor kid that was shot is I wonder if the officers' just sense of security was totally heightened because of the Sparks shooting of what was that kid, 13 years old, that shot and killed one of the teachers there.
Sure.
That's a good point.
There was a kid this morning
I
in
wonder if
Massachusetts
that was
turned out he killed
clearly
the
in their
teacher last
mind
night.
when that was going on, and because before that they probably wouldn't have had that heightened awareness that a kid, it's just a kid, just like that teacher that approached that young boy, hey, put down the gun, because kids don't shoot people, you know, and I wonder if that played into their mind too. Of course, like you said, we all don't know the specifics. Did he turn? Did he point? Did he?
Right. Right.
But
There's a lot to
you
be
wonder if
known
that's
yet.
a
Hey,
key piece in that.
Right.
I substitute teach in Taft, California, and if you remember, about a year ago, there was a student that came into the room with a shotgun and shot another student. And as it turned out, the armed sheriff was not on campus because he was snowed in that day. And I happened to know the head of security, and he walked in and talked the kid out of the gun while other students fled the room.
Yeah.
He was a decoy.
Well,
But-
it worked.
but
And in that
this,
particular
I
case,
know
it
this
worked.
guy personally,
Yeah.
and when they said, I knew exactly who it was,
Right.
and I knew that he would say, "Look, it's done."
But that was an ideal situation. I'm glad to hear it. We really don't know the details on this particular one, and the picture that I just saw of the toy gun looks
that's it,
awfully
yeah.
real. If that's it, and Dad may be right. Maybe there was something in the back of their minds about the other shootings that have been taking place in schools.
Hey.
But you're right.
And if they're Iraq, Afghanistan vets, believe me, their first reaction is I'm finding it a bit difficult that we can find a reason that it's okay for them to drop a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah,
I mean, they're extremly well armed. They're wearing vests. I don't know how well trained this kid would have been at 13 years old.
By the way, an AK-47, was it 7.62 by 39, would go through a vest like a hot knife through butter. It's more of a self-protection thing at that point.
Yeah, I mean they know
Dan,
what
you
the
still
damage.
with us?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm still here.
So, Dan, what do you? Because we got to wrap it up. We're reaching our 1 hour point here. What do you think? What could they have done different?
It's a tough one, right? Because I think as an adult, we're all kind of in the same age group, that when you see children, my first impression would be to try to talk him down, kind of like this teacher did in Sparks. But I think the thing is, if that's in the back of your mind, and like we've had in our family discussions about this kid that shot. Oh my God, he actually did shoot and kill somebody. Probably was in the back of their mind, going, "Wow, we can actually have killed her. Let's don't approach this like kid gloves." And so I'm right with you guys. I think first should have been trying the beanbag out of the shotgun, doing anything possible. At least it would have been nice if they wanted with. Obviously, these officers approached with several of them. Had somebody taken that shot first while the other ones are waiting to do the lethal if needed, at least it would have been nice to know they would have tried that first,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we're going to find more as time goes on, and we wrapped it up at our hour. Dan, thank you very much for calling. Call in a little earlier next time. We always love to hear from you.
All right,
please.
will do. Thanks, guys. Great show.
Okay, thank you. So, with wrapping that up, I think we'll find more that we can talk about next week as far as this young boy goes. Well, I'm sure we'll find out more. And I still think there might be a language barrier thing that was going on in this one.
I think what Dan said with the heightened security, and if there was a language barrier, I think those two things, was a
Although they
Yeah.
interviewed his father, and it sounded like he spoke English.
Yeah,
They
I don't
didn't.
know. Maybe he
You
did.
know.
Well, like I said, we'll
Well,
find out more.
we'll
We'll talk
have-
about next week.
And next week, we'll
Yeah.
find out.
Yeah,
more
next
about
week
what
we'll
happened.
find out. Hey, listen, guys, thank you once again, Jonathan Charney, John Manajastic, and this is
And
Rob.
Dan.
Huh?
and
And
Dan.
Dan.
And Dan for joining in, right? Absolutely. Thank you very much. This is Opinion versus Opinion. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Don't forget to
Bye.
donate.